Do you remember the smell of your grandmother's kitchen on a Sunday afternoon? That cast iron pan crackling, something wild and real simmering on the stove, food that actually tasted like something. Before the lobbyists rewrote the rulebook, before the corporations decided what was safe enough for your plate, somewhere between the 1970s and today, 23 foods that fed American families, food your parents served with pride, quietly became illegal. Some will shock you, some will make you angry, and at least one will bring you straight back home. Group 1. The Family Farm Kitchen. 1. Unpasteurized dairy. If you grew up in rural America during the 1970s, chances are you've seen a milk pail still warm from the morning milking. Before sunrise, farmers headed to the barn while children waited in the kitchen for a fresh pitcher of milk. It didn't come from a grocery store shelf in a wax carton. The milk came straight from the cow, often chilled only after it reached the house. For millions of Americans, raw milk wasn't a health trend. It was simply milk. Families drank it every day, poured it over cereal, used it in baking, and shared it with neighbors. Today, interstate sales of raw milk are prohibited by federal law, and many states heavily restrict or ban its sale altogether due to concerns about bacteria such as E. coli, Salmonella, and Listeria. What was once an ordinary part of farm life is now one of the most debated foods in America. 2. Raw milk cheese aged under 60 days. That fresh milk often became something else as well. In farm kitchens across America, homemade cheeses were crafted using techniques passed down through generations. Some were soft, creamy, and ready to eat within weeks rather than months. During the 1970s, imported and domestic raw milk cheeses with short aging periods were widely enjoyed. Today, FDA regulations prohibit the sale of raw milk cheeses aged less than 60 days. Many traditional European cheeses can only be sold in altered forms, using pasteurized milk or longer aging periods. To cheese lovers, it was another reminder that some old flavors never quite survived the modern era. 3. Home canned foods. Then there was the sound nearly every rural family remembers, the sharp pop of a jar seal opening on a cold winter evening. Throughout the 1970s, home canning remained a way of life. Basements and root cellars were lined with shelves of tomatoes, green beans, peaches, pickles, and homemade soup. Families preserved summer harvests, using methods often learned from parents and grandparents rather than government manuals. Today, selling home canned foods without proper licensing, inspections, and approved safety procedures can violate health regulations in many states. Concerns about botulism and contamination have led to much stricter oversight. The pantry shelves that once represented self-reliance would now require a surprising amount of paperwork if the products were sold publicly. Did your family put up jars of tomatoes every summer? Let us know in the comments below. 4. Homemade beef jerky for sale. Small-town markets were filled with foods that rarely came from large corporations. One of them was homemade beef jerky. Hunters, ranchers, and families often prepared jerky using secret spice blends and generations-old recipes. It wasn't unusual to find packages for sale at roadside stands, local fairs, or neighborhood stores. Today, selling homemade jerky requires inspected facilities, food safety plans, licensing, and regular testing. What was once a simple side business for many families has become a highly regulated commercial process. And if you think the foods were unusual, wait until you hear about the home remedies many Americans once trusted without a second thought. Group 2. Old-time home remedies. Disclaimer: the historical remedies mentioned are for educational purposes only. Do not attempt to recreate them at home. 5. Sassafras root tea. Long before energy drinks and vitamin supplements filled store shelves, many families relied on traditional remedies gathered from nature itself, In parts of Appalachia and the American South, sassafras root tea was a familiar sight. People dug up the roots, boiled them into a fragrant tea, and drank it as both a beverage and a folk remedy. The earthy aroma alone can still transport many older Americans back to childhood. In 1976, however, the FDA banned sassafras root for commercial food use after studies linked safrole, a compound found in the plant, to cancer in laboratory animals. Today, traditional sassafras tea has largely disappeared from store shelves. 6. Homemade cough syrup with codeine. When winter illnesses arrived, some families reached for remedies that would be unthinkable today. In certain communities, homemade cough mixtures occasionally contain small amounts of codeine-based medicines combined with honey, herbs, or family recipes passed down through generations. Regulations existed, but oversight was far less aggressive than it is now. Today, producing or distributing medications containing controlled substances without proper authorization can result in serious criminal charges. The kitchen remedies some grandparents trusted would now attract the attention of multiple federal agencies. 7. Homemade infant formula. Perhaps one of the most surprising examples involved babies. During the 1970s, some parents still used homemade infant formulas made from evaporated milk, corn syrup, and vitamin supplements. Pediatricians sometimes recommended these recipes, and many families considered them completely normal. Today, homemade infant formula is strongly discouraged due to nutritional and safety concerns, while commercially sold formulas must meet strict federal standards. What once sat in baby bottles across America would now be considered a major health risk by modern authorities. But if you think homemade remedies sound unusual today, wait until you hear what people were serving at parties. Group 3 Party Foods Everyone Accepted. 8. Tiger meat sandwiches. No food on this list surprises modern audiences quite like tiger meat. Despite the dramatic name, there was never any tiger involved. Instead, this Midwestern favorite consisted of raw ground beef mixed with onions, salt, pepper, and sometimes a raw egg. In the 1970s, tiger meat appeared at holiday gatherings, football parties, and family celebrations across parts of the Midwest. It was spread onto rye bread or crackers and eaten without much concern. People trusted their local butcher, and nobody thought twice about serving raw beef to guests. Today, food safety officials strongly warn against consuming raw ground beef due to risks from E. coli, salmonella, and other pathogens. A restaurant serving traditional tiger meat would face significant scrutiny from health authorities. What was once considered a party favorite is now viewed as a major food safety hazard. 9. Raw oyster platters. For seafood lovers, few treats felt more sophisticated than a platter of fresh raw oysters. Throughout the 1970s, oysters were commonly served year-round in coastal restaurants and seafood bars. Improved transportation and refrigeration encouraged people to enjoy them regardless of season. The old rule about only eating oysters during months containing the letter was often ignored. Today, strict regulations govern the sale of raw oysters, especially during warmer months when dangerous bacteria such as Vibrio vulnificus become more common. In some areas, untreated oysters harvested during summer months face significant restrictions. The carefree oyster bars of the 1970s would face a much different regulatory environment today. 10. Chitlins community suppers. In many southern communities, especially among African American families, chitlin suppers were far more than meals. They were profound social events. Large gatherings brought together neighbors, church members, and extended families around tables filled with carefully cleaned, slow-cooked pork intestines. The grueling preparation process took hours of communal labor, turning hard work into a treasured tradition that strengthened community bonds and celebrated shared heritage. Today, commercial preparation of kitlins is bound by tight health regulations due to bacterial risks. While safety is always important, it means the informal neighborhood kitlin suppers built on generations of trust have largely faded. What once required only a welcoming porch and a tight-knit community would now be tangled in a web of modern permits, commercial inspections, and rigid health codes. 11. Traditional haggis imports. Scottish American families once had easier access to authentic haggis than they do today. Traditional haggis contains sheep organs mixed with oats, onions, and spices, all prepared according to centuries-old recipes. During the 1970s, imported versions remained available for cultural celebrations and family gatherings. Over time, regulations regarding livestock lungs and imported sheep products changed dramatically. Today, authentic Scottish haggis made according to traditional recipes cannot legally enter the United States. While modified versions exist, many traditionalists argue they simply are not the same. Group 4. When Americans fed themselves. 12. Home-butchered venison. For millions of rural Americans, hunting season wasn't a hobby. It was part of putting food on the table. After a successful deer hunt, families often processed the meat themselves. Garages, sheds, and barns became temporary butcher shops as venison was cut, wrapped, frozen, and shared with neighbors. The freezer full of deer meat represented hard work, skill, and self-reliance. Today, hunting remains popular, but regulations surrounding processing, transportation, and distribution of wild game have become much stricter. Commercial sale of wild harvested venison is generally prohibited. The informal sharing of game meat that once happened throughout rural America now faces far greater oversight. 13. Roadkill stew. As strange as it may sound today, many rural families believed wasting usable meat was foolish. When deer, rabbits, or other animals were struck by vehicles, some people salvaged the meat rather than letting it go to waste. During difficult economic times, this practical approach was considered common sense by many communities. Today, roadkill salvage laws vary dramatically by state. Some require permits and reporting, while others prohibit the practice entirely. What once seemed like resourcefulness can now create unexpected legal complications. 14. Wild mushroom meals. During the Back to the Lamb movement of the 1970s, interest in foraging exploded. Families gathered wild mushrooms from forests, fields, and mountain trails. Experienced foragers passed their knowledge to younger generations, teaching which mushrooms were safe and which could be deadly. Some local restaurants even purchased mushrooms from trusted gatherers. Today, commercial sales of wild mushrooms often require expert identification and strict documentation. While personal foraging remains legal in many places, selling wild mushrooms has become heavily regulated due to safety concerns. 15. Homemade moonshine. In parts of Appalachia and the rural South, homemade moonshine remained a legendary part of local culture. Though technically illegal even then, enforcement varied widely, and stories about hidden stills became part of American folklore. Families guarded recipes, and homemade spirits often appeared at gatherings and celebrations. Today, producing distilled alcohol without proper licensing remains a serious federal offense. Penalties can include substantial fines and prison time. What was once treated by some communities as a tradition is now aggressively regulated. 16. High alcohol kombucha. Long before kombucha became a supermarket trend, health-conscious Americans were brewing it at home. Without modern testing equipment, fermentation often continued longer than intended, producing drinks with a slight, unexpected kick, often crossing the line into a mild alcoholic beverage without anyone realizing it. Friends shared bottles without realizing they had effectively created an alcoholic beverage. Today, products containing more than 0.5% alcohol fall under additional regulations involving licensing, taxation, and distribution requirements. A homemade health drink from the 1970s could easily be classified very differently under modern rules. And if you think government regulations only changed what people grew or hunted, the next foods involve animals that simply disappeared from American menus altogether. Group 5. The foods that vanished. 17. Sea turtle soup. There was a time when ordering sea turtle soup signaled sophistication. For generations, this rich soup appeared on the menus of upscale restaurants, especially in coastal communities with strong maritime traditions. Made from green sea turtle meat and seasoned according to recipes dating back centuries, it was considered a luxury reserved for special occasions. By the 1970s, however, sea turtle populations were already declining rapidly. Conservationists warned that continued harvesting could push several species toward extinction. Over time, protections expanded, and today every species of sea turtle found in US waters is protected by federal law. Hunting, possessing, or consuming sea turtles or their eggs can result in severe penalties. What was once viewed as fine dining would now be considered a serious wildlife crime. 18. Whale meat steaks. For modern Americans, the idea of eating whale meat feels almost unimaginable. Yet during the early 1970s, whale meat could still be found in certain markets connected to whaling traditions and immigrant communities. Prepared as steaks or roasts, it was viewed by some as an exotic alternative to beef. Everything changed after growing international concern about whale populations. The Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972 and later international agreements transformed public attitudes toward whaling. Today, possessing or consuming whale meat in the United States is generally prohibited, except under limited circumstances involving indigenous subsistence rights. What once appeared on dinner plates now carries some of the strongest wildlife protections in the world. Group 6. The things that flipped completely. 19. Absinthe cocktails. Few drinks carried more mystery than absinthe. Known as the Green Fairy, absinthe had been banned in the United States since 1912. During the 1970s, imported bottles occasionally circulated through artistic and countercultural circles, adding to the drink's rebellious reputation. But here's the twist. In 2007, absinthe returned to the American market after regulators determined that properly produced versions could be sold legally under specific standards. What was once forbidden became legal again. It's one of the rare examples where regulations moved in the opposite direction. 20. Horse meat steaks. Horse meat occupied an unusual place in American culture. While never widely popular, it remained available in some areas during the 1970s and was familiar to certain immigrant communities. Over time, changing public attitudes and legal restrictions pushed horse meat almost entirely off the American menu. Today, finding horse meat for human consumption in the United States is extraordinarily difficult and, in many places, effectively impossible. Whether you believe these laws made America safer or simply more regulated, one thing is certain: the way Americans eat has changed dramatically. Many of the foods we've talked about tonight didn't just disappear from dinner tables. They belong to an entire way of life that has slowly faded from view. For many families, food wasn't just something purchased from a store. It was hunted, grown, traded, shared, passed down from one generation to the next. A neighbor might bring over venison after hunting season. A grandmother might fill the pantry with jars of tomatoes. A local farmer might hand you a bottle of fresh milk before sunrise. Maybe that's the part people miss most. Not necessarily the food itself, but the sense of connection, self-reliance, and community that came with it. Now we'd love to hear from you. Which of these foods do you remember eating? And which one would you gladly bring back today? Share your memories in the comments below, and let's take a trip back to the 1970s together.